Every day since, it feels like we've seen terrible heaped on top of horrible with a side of unthinkable. And our Latinx community has taken the brunt of that. And if we don't band together now and do our jobs over the next 88 days, we'll get more of the same. But this election is about more than the alternative. It's about the affirmative. This week, Vice President Biden released his plan for the Latino community. And I want to highlight his proposal to provide universal preschool for all 3 and 4-year-olds. Iowa's Latinx community is young and growing. Yet in places like my hometown of Des Moines, we still lack access to preschool. Last year, I led a campaign to raise $60,000 to fund a new preschool classroom. We were successful, and 40 more 4-year-olds got to go to school last year. But in Joe Biden's America, we would not have to go door to door to meet our children's basic needs. Joe Biden will build on our American dream. Now with that, I want to turn things over to Congressman Gallego. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me virtually back in Iowa. I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time during 2016 campaigning all over, and including Storm Lake. So it's good to meet the council member, soon to be state representative. And you'll love the state house. I was a state rep here in Arizona for 4 years before Congress. I am here I have been talking for the last couple of days about Biden's Latino agenda because, number one, it is both important to the campaign, but it's also important to the nation. What happens to the Latino community will affect the rest of this country for time to come. We are the largest growing demographic. We're the demographic that is finding itself the most in our schools. If you look at certain workplaces, it is our brothers and sisters that are going to be the main employees and sometimes the main employers. In the Marine Corps, we had so many Latinos in my Marine Corps unit that half the time we spoke Spanish in Iraq, so the Iraqis wouldn't understand what we were saying because it's always better to be safe than sorry. And so this Latino agenda really is based and rooted in dignity and respect for Latino community. The dignity and respect that we just have not received under this administration. Let's not forget that this administration, this Trump campaign started his rise to power, quote unquote, on the backs of the hatred of Latinos when he came down that escalator. And time again, he's used us as a calling card to bring out some of the worst elements of voters and to distract from his failed leadership. And even more so now, we see that failed leadership and how it's affecting our community. Let's be clear, COVID-19 has almost literally destroyed so many gains that the Latino community had picked up in the last 10 years. Our wealth is now wiped out. We have high levels of unemployment. In most states, including my state of Arizona, even California, most of the deaths from COVID-19 are Latinos. And to make matters worse, we're still the people that are out there as the essential workers, which is why we're getting sick, right? I'm sure in Iowa, much like the same, when I was growing up, I worked in a meat packing factory, and everyone in there, save for maybe a couple people, were Latinos. And they were, butchering, they were packaging, they were slaughtering everything they could. And they still did it during the middle of a pandemic. But they don't get the dignity and respect of being able to make enough money to actually bring home enough food or pay the rent. They don't get the healthcare that they deserve when we tell them, you have to go to work for this country, but this country doesn't turn around and give you healthcare, right? You're essential enough to feed us, but you're not essential enough for us to take care of you, right? And there's just a litany of other agenda points that is found in the Latino agenda. But the most important thing, again, is that it's a focus on the future. It's focused on the future of this country, which is Latino, and investment in that future. And I think this is something that we should celebrate. This is the first time in my short time in politics, at least, but since I've been involved in presidential politics since Clinton, that I've seen such a focused agenda on the Latino community and a commitment to get that vote out. And the fact that we're doing this in Iowa, I'm doing some of this in other states here in Arizona, tells you that this campaign is not going to let any stone unturned. And with that, I want to throw it back to the local experts in Iowa If we ever get out of this, and we will once Biden's elected, I can't wait to see you guys again.
Thank you, Congressman Gallego. It's a pleasure to see you again, and to see you back in Iowa virtually. But we've seen you a lot in Iowa in person, and we appreciate your affection for our state. I'm going to throw my first question to Sarah. You're the first Latina elected official in Iowa, so you get the first question. So you won your primary just about 2 short months ago, which feels about 2 years ago in 2020. Now, when you're elected this fall, you'll be the first Latina to serve in the state house. And I can't say that enough. That's the most important thing that we can keep talking about in Iowa from here through November 3rd. Now, this week, Vice President Biden announced his Latino agenda, which we're here to talk about. And that agenda really focuses on this reality that the collective success of our country relies on the success of our Latino community. So you've led the way for a lot of Latinas, a lot of women in Iowa. Can you talk a little bit about what having someone like Joe Biden and his ticket in the White House would mean for Latinos like you that we want to run and to lead in our state and all across the country?
Sure. First of all, I want to say that Joe Biden has a very good agenda that addresses very important issues that Latinos are facing today in the nation. And that's why it's extremely important that every eligible voter votes in the November election. You vote, is your voice, and vota for Biden. Now, answering to your question, Biden has promised to have a woman as a vice president. And by choosing a woman, he sends a strong message about equity and inspire women from all backgrounds to participate in the political agenda and be part of the decision-making process. When I was on city council, one of the things that I realized, this is based on 2003, 2004, the number of women in public office is really small. And I believe that by choosing a woman, it will really inspire other women to run for any level of government, especially local government. We're talking about city council, board of supervisors, state representatives, and you name it. Our problems start right here at home. So I think that is a great inspiration for every woman to do, and I encourage everyone to do it. Worst scenario for me, if I don't win, at least we can try to make a difference to get involved in politics and public policy.
That's wonderful, and I really couldn't have said it better myself. I spent a lot of time trying to help other Latinos and Latinos run for office in Iowa. And in the 5 years since we've led the LPN, which you've been such a good and leader of, we've seen it go from just 8 Latino elected officials in Iowa now to almost 30. It's still way behind where we need to be, and we need to get you into the Iowa House. But we're making progress every year, and the progress is made. You nailed it. It's those odd year elections when we elect all of our school board members and our city council members, and having Vice President Biden and his soon-to-be vice president nominee will be a great example for more women, I think, to run all across the state. Now I want to kick it over to Lilian. Now, I just kind of a little earlier read off the brag list of everything that you've done in 2 short years since graduating, which surpasses me and probably everybody else on this call. But I didn't note the most important thing, which is you recently became a citizen. And this is going to be your first election, the first general election that you'll vote in. Your story is quite alike most or many Latino family stories in Iowa. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, and then why you're supporting Vice President Biden and why you think he's going to be the president that'll stand up for first-time voters like yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. I know that for the longest time, you all have been trailblazers either here in the Iowa community or across the country, and to be able to stand by you all is a great testament to the work that you've done to empower young people like me to be in the position that we are at now. But I think most importantly, and it goes back to your question, Rob, about my personal story. As much as I have gone through incredible hardships and my family has gone through incredible hardships, that story and those challenges are not unique to myself or my family. They are very similar to what other immigrants and Latinos in Iowa and across the country experience. I think that my connection to Joe Biden is a very personal one, and it is one that has impacted my entire trajectory in my lifetime. I moved to the States when I was 7 years old with my mother and my sister, a single mom. She moved straight to Iowa, and we were seeking refuge from a domestic violence household. One thing that Joe Biden has been an ardent and strong advocate for has been to protect women against violence, gendered violence, and physical violence. And because of his incredible advocacy in working towards the Violence Against Women's Act, I was able to secure protections to then become a legal permanent resident and now be a U.S. citizen. And because of all of that, I was the first person in my family to be able to attend and go to college, to secure enough financial aid, to be a trailblazer on my own, and then beyond that, to partake in internships and programs that would have never really been available to me, and therefore my younger sister. And I think through all of that, I faced a big sense of urgency in making sure that these small privileges that I gained throughout my trajectory, that I did everything possible to give back to the community that gave us so much. Growing up, I didn't know that going to your local community center for food and for clothing was something that other families were experiencing. To me, that was normal. And it wasn't until I went to college that I started to align, the language of social justice to the languages of my everyday experiences and therefore our communities. And knowing how personal politics is and for how long our communities have been used as scapegoats for terrorizing stories and actually just that, myths, I think it's really important for us to talk about how much our community can do for this country, has been doing for this country. And like you said, Rob, during one of the Latino Political Network trainings, if Latinos aren't at the table of decisions, then we are on the menu. And so I think it is incredibly important to not only support local candidates like Sarah, but also, hold our elected officials accountable from our local elections to our presidential elections, and make sure that we work with our elected representatives to make sure that our voices are heard and that our stories are being taken into account as these public policies are made.
I love it. And I mean, that's why you're one of the leaders. That's why you're coming and why you're going to craft the future for folks in Iowa. And it's just so wonderful to hear you talk about your story and connect that to policy and to voting, because those are the stakes for all of us. I'm going to, we've heard from two of our leaders out here in Iowa. I'm going to bring it back to Congressman Gallego, because you've got the view of what it will take to do this, and you've been out in Washington now for 6 years. You've seen the end of the Obama administration, and then all of the current administration. Do you think, well, let me take a step back here. This is a really bold proposal that Vice President Biden's put out for our community. It's comprehensive. It will change things like generational poverty. It'll get more people to have the right to vote and to be secure in their community. Can Joe Biden get this done in Washington? And if so, how does it happen?
Sorry, I just had my crying son in the background. Mijo, come over here. Look, it can be done, but you need to have leadership that is really invested in it. And the biggest problem you have is that you have right now Republicans in the Senate that don't really believe in the power of the Latino community. They believe in our labor They certainly believe in our ability to feed the country, to defend the country in the military, but they don't actually believe in the agenda that we are, the future of this country. You need to invest in us in order for us to have a good future. So yes, number one, obviously we need to elect Biden, but we also need to get rid of Joni Ernst in Iowa. She doesn't help in terms of any movement forward on the Latino agenda. We've been waiting for a solution to the DREAM Act. She hasn't helped. Donald Trump just uses our dreamers as pawns every day. So it is incumbent upon us to both elect this good man with this great agenda, but also to have the people behind him that are going to be there to actually help the whole way. And look, it's a crying shame that we're not there right now, but we can do it, and it will be places like Iowa. It will be people like Lilian that can lead this. It's going to be young Latinos or young Latinx community in general that is going to be that thin line between us winning or losing this election. And I think we have to accept that that is a reality. We as the community, and a community of many people that came to this country believing in the idea of democracy and justice, might be the only people that stand between us no longer being a democratic country and full of injustice and inequity.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. The next thing I kind of want to put out there is, I've been making a lot of calls these last couple of weeks, talking to a lot of friends, a lot of other leaders in Iowa about Vice President Biden. And, the first thing people always say is, listen, I'm in, we got to win this. But then we'll talk about, well, it's Iowa, right? So who did you support in the caucus, and how did that end up? And what's amazing is, well, it's not amazing. Actually, it's predicted, right? There's 3 Iowans on this call, and we supported 3 different presidential candidates just a couple of months ago. I sold out completely for Julian Castro, but when he dropped out in January, I proudly endorsed Joe Biden because he was the right mix of ambition and ability to get it done. Lilian worked really hard for Senator Harris. Sarah was a supporter of Senator Warren. Do either one of the two of you want to talk about, what brought you into this process, into those caucuses, and why now is the time to transition to Vice President Biden?
I'll allow Sarah to answer first.
Hey, why? I think it's very important that we actually, like you say, I was for Warren, but now Biden is the one that we have to focus. And one of the things that we have to do, I strongly believe, this could happen, but we need to get the Latino community, Latino voters to get out and vote. And that's a lot of work, I advocate, I'm a strong advocate, and I work hard, running or no, getting Latinos to register, to get the absentee ballot, to educate about that. There's a lot of gaps and a lot of barriers out there still, that even if when they become, and probably, Liam, when you become a U.S. citizen, and that happens to all of us, and this is all new, we don't even know how to fill out the form, and even when we go out to vote, we don't even know who or who. One of the things that I did in the first time when I ran, seriously, I was carrying vote cards from Republicans and Democrats, and I was actually educating voters because they don't even know who the candidates are. And I was asking, do you know about this guy? And do you know about this guy? And do you know why is he running for him? So it's a lot of work. And I believe that the only way things can happen, and they really can happen. Look at here, for instance, in Buena Vista County, we had the fastest growing population of Latinos, and from everywhere in the world, not just Latinos. And they're becoming more participant, but there's a lot of work to do, a lot of work. And I think it could happen, but we need to send the right message. We need to get everybody involved. And importance of voting. When someone is voting, what does that mean to me? That is my voice, I remember many years ago when I was working with domestic battered immigrant woman, and we're going into court, and the judge didn't sign this petition because there was something, I can't even remember, but there was a Latina girl with me, and she was very disappointed that the judge didn't grant that, and she wanted to, argue. And then US born citizen from Texas. And I asked her, do you vote? No. Okay, this is where it's important to get on board. Issues that matter to you and your life, and they also affect everyone. I mean, we're talking about from education, healthcare, we're talking about raising the minimum wage, we're talking about water quality. I mean, there's a lot of issues. And right now, with our guy that is in place, nothing is happening. So it is important to get involved.
I think the only thing I would add to that is definitely echo what Sarah said about what the campaigns did for the state of Iowa when the caucus was happening. Beyond people advocating for their own personal preferences, I saw the community engaged like I had never seen it before. And not only that, but that was the first time that my mother and I had ever voted in a primary election, both at the state level and at the local level. And to be able to say that I was able to cast a vote for a fellow Latina to run for city council was something that I had never imagined. And not only did we see an increased amount of engagement, but we also saw people run for office. And so I think despite, the personal preferences that we have or the differences that each candidate could bring, I think right now it is extremely important to remember that there is so much on the line, that there are so many Latinos in Iowa who face hardships every single day. For them, it's life to death issues. It is not just about a game of politics. And so to be silent is to be complicit, to not vote is to be complicit. And so we have a responsibility, if we're able to vote, if we're not able to vote, to somehow participate and encourage those people who can vote to educate themselves on the issues that matter most to them, and to bring their family members and their friends to go to the polls to get that absentee ballot form and make sure that their voice is heard.
Thank you. So we're just about at time here. And before I close things out, I want to give it back to our friend from Phoenix to give us a couple thoughts on what the stakes are for this fall, and what you tell us just a little bit about what you're doing out in Arizona, because you're leading one of these councils out there. We just announced ours in Iowa today. Yep. You've had yours going for a while. Tell us what you're doing and how you're getting the vote out there, because we need to win Arizona just like we need to win Iowa.
Right. Well, I want us to all win on the same night. How about that? Let's just talk what's at stake. What's at stake is, I think, democracy itself. We have met a president who doesn't understand norms, will blatantly violate the law, and then will get backed up by a Senate Republican who they don't even keep him accountable. He robs the Treasury to pay for his pet projects. He cuts deals with different foreign entities to personally benefit himself and his family. All this kind of stuff that is just the beginning. And then to make matters worse, what would this mean for the Latino community in terms of immigration reform? Forget that. I mean, if anything, we're going to go backwards, not forwards. In terms of working standards, in terms of our environment, everything that we are affected by, this man touches and makes it really bad. So what we need in Iowa and what we're doing in Arizona is we're doing a strong field pitch. Every day we're on the phone, calling people, telling them to please sign up for early ballots. Please make sure you know where you're voting. We're seeking volunteers. There's not a day that we're not on the phones now. We have 30 days of early voting in Arizona. So our first ballot drops now in less than 60 days. So we're out there hitting it. And the Latino Leaders Council in Arizona, what we largely do is we're the facilitators of that volunteer corps, especially the volunteer corps that can speak Spanish. You have to remember, Arizona is about 32% Latino, and we've had people from multiple generations that have been here since the Spaniards owned Arizona, all the way to recent immigrants that just arrived last year. So we have to talk to everybody. We have to get them all together, and we all have to get together to fight and win this battle, because it does matter. Politics changes very fast, and the fact that we can say Iowa's a swing state again makes me so happy. I'm glad that we as Arizona are finally a swing state, and hopefully they call both victories for us on that day. But it's not possible unless you actually get the volunteers out there and start making those phone calls. And if you can do any type of social distancing canvassing, obviously. So please reach out to hopefully Rob or Lillian or the councilwoman. You could give them the email and the phone number to sign up to it. But that's the way we're going to do it. Just good sweat labor will win this.
I couldn't agree more, and that sets the standard for us. So we're 88 days out of this election, and we need to get Vice President Biden back in the White House. But we can't stop there, right? Congressman Gallego mentioned electing Teresa Greenfield as our next senator. We've got to return two members of Congress back to Washington and elect Rita Hart in House District, in Congressional District 2, and elect J.D. Scholten in District 4. We've got to retake the Iowa House. I couldn't tell you how important that is right now, dealing with everything that's going on with Return to Learn and the governor as a school board member trying to usurp our authority. We need the Iowa House and the Iowa Senate back in Democratic control. And I believe as much as ever, with the growth in our community, our youth, and our political engagement, that our Latinx community is the key to winning Iowa. We are the margin for everybody I just mentioned. And if we do our job, and trust me, I'm going to throw everything I have into this. And if you want to help, just find me. We'll get you engaged. We'll be coming to your doorstep asking for your help. A couple of things to think about between now and Election Day. Just like in Arizona, they've cut our early voting window down to about a month too. But you can request your absentee ballot today. All you have to do is fill out the form at sos.iowa.gov. Make sure to fill it out completely. If you don't know your voter PIN, you can get it simply by calling your county auditor. You can also sign up to help this campaign out by texting volunteer to 30330. You can join our weekend of action this Saturday by visiting joebiden.com/events. And please visit joebiden.com/todosconbiden to learn more about Joe Biden's agenda for the Latino community. You'll hear a lot more from me and our council over the next several weeks. We've got 88 days to get this done, and that starts now. Thank you for your time today. We're going to win in November, and we're going to do it together. Have a good day.
Adios.